Good evening, everyone. Hello to everybody around the world in the CBD Training Academy community and beyond. We want to Good evening, everybody in the global CBD Training Academy community. I want to welcome you back to one of our fantastic success webinars. For those of you who might be tuning in and joining us for the very first time, we want to say welcome in whatever language you speak, and we are delighted to be bringing you this very special edition webinar, webinar number 4 of our Success Webinar series called Extraction Magic, Best Practices for the Cannabis Industry with the one and only Dr. John McKay. We're very pleased to have you on this webinar. If this is the first time you're meeting our community, we want to say congratulations for finding one of the special places on the internet, and this webinar is designed to give both a broad perspective and a deep dive on different aspects of this fantastic emerging industry called cannabis. And particularly our focus is often on CBD, but tonight's broadcast, because extraction is really involves all different kinds of plants, we're going to cover a pretty broad range. And just so you know, if everybody can make sure that they are in listen-only mode, there is an opportunity in these webinars to ask questions, and we'll be doing that throughout, but really we'd prefer if you populate the questions at the end of the webinar. We do have a number of people in our community who could not be on the webinar tonight who sent in some pre-designed questions as well, so we're going to make sure the next hour is full of fun and information. And really, this is going to be, I think, one of these webinars. We called it Extraction Magic because we are going to talk about some pretty fantastic topics. And we do these webinars. We do a monthly webinar that's open to the public. We have different webinars for our internal communities, our alumni, our founders program. But just as a quick snapshot so you know, the CBD Training Academy, we offer trainings, inspiration and information both online and in live in-person events around the country, and our goal is to deliver integrity, dependability, and expertise to all facets, every level of the cannabis and CBD industries. Our focus is on CBD because we feel it's a very, very important step forward both in the industry itself and to all the other industries that we address through CBD, which is basically just about every step along the way of the human experience. So welcome, here we go. Let's introduce our very special guest tonight. His name is John McKay. He has a PhD. John is the CTO for Newbridge Global Ventures. He earned his degree in chemistry at the St. Lawrence University, as well. Excuse me just one moment here. Okay. The words are the webinar management console was obscuring some of the words, so I apologize. John earned his BA in chemistry at St. Lawrence University. He also earned his PhD at the University of Vermont, where he focused on inorganic chemistry and the synthesis of cancer-fighting compounds. That alone should let everybody know that we are dealing with a true visionary in the industry. After working and teaching positions at the University of Vermont, Lyndon State College, and Davidson College, he went on to join the Waters Corporation in 1983. John has been called the king of extraction, and with a favorite quote of "extract the most you can from every day." Very, very exciting. And I just want to say welcome, John McKay.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you, John. Just a real quick ditty about everyone.
I did get a BA in chemistry only because I decided not to take German.
Okay. So you're really good with long Greek and Latin words, but not so much with the German. Is that what it is?
That's correct.
Good to know. All right.
Give me a BA.
Get to the BA. Okay, we'll talk more about your background in just a minute, but just a real quick insight about me. I'm part of the CBD Training Academy team. I worked in a lot of different roles in the cannabis industry. I'm currently functioning as a special consultant for business development, education, and experience here at the CBD Training Academy. I'm really involved with curriculum, media training platform. I have a lot of different industry backgrounds. I like to tell people I have a Bruce Wayne life and a Batman life, and this is certainly a splendid part of my Bruce Wayne life, being involved with the CBD Training Academy team. I also enjoy fitness, science, health, the things that make people feel good, kind of stimulate the brain. And I have been called by some of my close associates the king of abstraction. So this entire there we go, John. That was for you, actually. The nation's premier extraction experience. This is why we're doing the webinar tonight, May 29th through the 30th in Pala, California. A very, very exciting week of events. It's all concentrated around the idea of extraction as a very important part of the value chain in cannabis. The conference itself is called Concentration 2019. It's powered by Extraction Magazine, Terpenes and Testing Magazine, and our friends over at Mace Media, who also produce the CBD Expos that we are partnered with through the CBD Training Academy. And the day before, May 29th, it's a Wednesday from 9 to 5 in Pala. That's the nation's premier extraction business certification. So we wanted to have John on. This was not part of our monthly editorial calendar. This is a special webinar, so we're delighted to see so many people who have joined us tonight. And we know that CBD in particular, but the entire cannabis industry is turning the soil on new opportunities, and we can honestly say it's the opportunity of a lifetime, because where else can you go in the world and find this magic combination of an industry that's been around for decades, but is constantly presenting new opportunities and new possibilities, basically revolving around a plant that has been with the human species for thousands of years in many different incarnations, but at its essence, it is still the same plant. Yes, there's cannabis. Yes, there's hemp. It's all cannabis. And there's marijuana on one side, which is high THC. There's hemp, which tends to be more high CBD. And all of the ins and outs of these industries really have created, both for everyone in any step in the value chain, in any niche or vertical within the industry, the opportunity of a lifetime. Now, of course, you hear all about this, that this is a billion-dollar industry, estimated $22 billion by 2022. Those figures are probably going to keep to be revised. But most of all, where does everyone here fit in? And that's what these success webinars are all about, ladies and gentlemen. We want you to know that as becoming part of our community, we want to know what you bring to the game, and we want to help you, give you the platform, the insight, the information, and the structure to succeed at any step in the value chain. Now, this, of course, is just a really quick snapshot of where we're at as an industry. This is a generic bell curve, but, you know, generally the early people and innovators, and then there's early adopters, and this could be for any industry. And then, of course, the laggards way down at the end, and nobody on this call is a laggard. You might be, in your life, you might be a laggard, but since you're on the Success webinar, you're definitely here in this early phase. And in the industry, especially with the CBD component and focus in cannabis, there's a lot of opportunity still to come. The Farm Bill, of course, made the whole thing ignite. CBD had been percolating ever since the medical marijuana industry was being legalized in states across the country. Every 4 years, they renovate the Farm Bill, the Agricultural Farm Bill, and it was passed this year, which pretty much made it descheduled some cannabis products from Controlled Substances Act for the first time, but for CBD, it generally made hemp legal across the United States, which opened the door for CBD to become just the robust industry that it's becoming. Now, what you'll learn on this webinar, the CBD TA Network, I just want to say hello to everyone who's joined us. Let's take a quick look here. Oh, geez, I see that we have a great number of people on the line, a lot of our alumni. Hi, Greg Lovato. Hey, Jayon. Anya Haseo. Jeff Wolfson, nice to see you. I'm sorry, folks, I don't see everyone's names yet, but I'm just giving a shout out to the people. Hi, Melanie McLeod. Melanie's one of our friends in Indiana. She's one of our certified CBD coaches. She did the online program, so delighted to have her along. And we also have Shannon Swantek. Hi, Shannon. Thanks for joining. Susan Cronenberger, I think she's joining us at the Extraction Conference. Nice to see you. Wayne Zullinger from Tennessee. Bunch of other people still checking in, but I just wanted to say greetings. And if you're hearing this for the first time, we just wanted to let you know, in the industry, we feel our most important asset as a product agnostic training academy is our community, because that's really what's going to build the industry anyway. The product is there. It's an established industry with tons of room for innovation, and the people in our community, we're going to help them make it there. You're really part of a global network, and we're going to be releasing our platform, our global networking platform, in just a little bit. How we got here in cannabis, we're about to dive into that with John. A snapshot of the value in cannabis and the CBD ecosystem, the value chain, that's supposed to say, and then QA at the extraction level. So everybody take a deep breath. Stretch the hands, loosen the neck. You had a long day. Let's have some fun. So, John, are you ready, everybody? John, let's start with you. How did this whole, I'm sorry, I'm going to go back here. One more thing here. There is a key word of today's webinar that will establish the road to success at any level in the industry? And we shall reveal that answer in just a moment. So, John, let's go back to this page. How we got here in cannabis. So you have a long career as a very accomplished scientist, and the unique part of having you as one of our speakers at our extraction business certification is that you also are a businessman, and you're an inventor. You work with investment. Tell us how you got to this point in cannabis for yourself.
So for me, it was a day of a bit of confusion, and certainly I backed into the industry. And one of the parts was that it was May 1st, 2013, and I was at a Waters Corporation management meeting, and the Boston Globe came out, and on the front page was medical marijuana applications are going to be started to be accepted. And the first thing I thought to myself was, that's got to be the stupidest idea I've ever heard. I just couldn't fathom the fact that they were going to do medical marijuana because I had no idea what it was. And then it wasn't within probably 2 or 3 months after that that I started getting phone calls at Waters Corporation saying, we need some help with potency, and we need some help with pesticides, and we need some help with extraction. And then I kind of started to study up on the industry. I did some exploratory seminars out in the West Coast, and from that saw the significant need for greater product development, more testing, more internal testing, more knowing what the potential contaminants could be or how you could get rid of contaminants. And so I actually started from that side. One of the things I did do from probably November of 2013 is I had attended one of the first conferences on cannabis, a very small conference. It was 300 people, but CNN was there, MSNBC, and all the television networks were there. And I just thought, this has got to be the craziest thing I have ever seen. But from that, I could tell that there was a need for the world to know a little bit more on the education side, the world for knowing more about the science of it. And at that conference, there was a lawyer who said, during one of the presentations, said, if you study for 3 months, you'll be an expert. And I thought, that's not so long. And so I started studying every morning for about an hour. And still now I'm 6 years into it. And I would say 6 out of 7 days, I still get up in the morning. I'll study for an hour to hour and a half, 2 hours on the science of cannabis, rereading some of the scientific papers, or looking at the patents from other industries and just trying to figure out a way to help people. That's how I started.
Very, very exciting. Yeah, that sounds like a great way to start the day. I bet you there's tens of millions of people around the world who would say they start the same way every day, almost, right? They probably all have their own way to start the day in the cannabis space. And the good news is that we're talking about the word science, but really that's a very broad definition when it comes to not only your personal and professional experience, but your personal interest with the plant as well. So let's wind back just a minute and let's talk about science in the broadest possible aspect, because many people jumping in, especially new people to the industry, are very hungry for the information, the right message, the right statistic, the right research that shows that it works. And really, the best way that I think to approach the entire industry is that we know that it works. We just have to make sure that we bring integrity, dependability, and expertise to whatever level or topic we're involved with. What that means is it's just going to keep flowing. It's like the dam has broke on the information cycle that cannabis has many, many purposes, both in the medical, the healthcare, the spiritual world, even in the workaday world, there's a role, and that includes THC, CBD, all the other cannabinoids, all the terpenes. And as a scientist, how far back in your let's say your education or your early professional career did you start to get interested in the biology of the plant rather than just the medical or scientific application?
I would say it was probably still 2013. So it was 2013 that towards the summer, reading a lot of the work, Dr. Ethan Russo, John McKay, certainly Jahan had some significant work on the science side, on the biology side, but it also moves towards my role at the University of Vermont as an adjunct professor for the College of Medicine, School of Pharmacology, with the education side of where does it go into the brain chemistry. And so there's some fascinating work on the biology side and the botany side that show a lot of different characteristics of this plant that are unique. But it's still knowing the boundaries of the good and the bad and going into a scientific experiment, not with a bias of I'm going to show how good this plant is or a bias of I'm going to show how evil this plant is, but just going in with the facts and let the facts land where they are and let the boundaries be where they are.
Yeah, and this also brings up another really interesting point for a number of people. The industry right now is being flooded by people from all different types of industries, all different walks of life, all different levels of education, and they're bringing their professional acumen into what is otherwise sometimes an obscure, sometimes an outrageous, sometimes a completely misunderstood plant and byproducts, which includes the things that are extracted, the seeds. Many people don't even realize that cannabis hemp seeds are different from the hemp flower. So the hemp flower produces THC, CBD, all those other chemicals, but the hemp seeds are just as nutritious. They're high in linoleic acid, which is one of the most important fatty acids for your heart muscles, your cardiac muscles, the only muscles in your body that basically work every day, every moment of your life. So what does that tell you about the medicinal and nutritional component of one part of the plant called hemp? And of course, anybody who's listening knows that there's an entire history of both cannabis, of hashish, of marijuana, of hemp in the American colonies. A lot of the early exports were pure hemp fibers. They used them for ropes on ships. I believe that one of the early versions of the American flag was on hemp fiber. And now the plant is about to become ubiquitous. And different states are passing legislation to grow the plant. So what was it? Was there a single moment, John, that converted you from skeptical to like, wow, I'm gonna steep myself in this? Was there one fact or one research report or one scientific thing that you learned that really turned the key for you?
I would say that Dr. Gupta's exploration into Colorado and finding the seizure was important. I did have a sister who died from epilepsy, so I realized how important it is for the family circle and for that human being to grow, to their potential. And that's a little hard to do on phenobarbital or trying to stay off the seizures and such. I would also say that it was reading some of Jay Hunt's early work when he was in grad school and looking at Dr. Russo's work. There's a number of good chemists that would have that. So seeing all that work and then being able to put it together was fairly important for me. I would say that the turning point is certainly a lot of that early work versus the chemistry. There was another point in time when I went to go visit a professor at Northeastern. And of course, I'm going to try and forget his name as soon as I can here. So it was Macrionis, Dr. Alexandra Macrionis. And so on his side, he has many of the patents on the synthesis of the cannabinoids as well as the deuterated ones. And because you can put a deuterium on instead of hydrogen, that's the way you'd be able to track it to the body to know where it goes for metabolic studies as we move forward. And so I would say that my visit with him, or a couple of visits with him, and seeing all the work that he was doing was a turning point, I would say. But this is a legitimate business to be explored, and science.
Yeah, and it's exciting because I think everybody on the call, no matter where you are with your experience, whether you've walked with cannabis in your personal life or your professional life, and I use that expression because some people consume it, some people just research it, some people distribute it, but whatever you do in the space, and especially in the CBD space, I think everyone has a story when they went from thinking it was this until it sort of emerged and revealed itself as that. And for me, it was very clear, even though I first was introduced to cannabis back in the 1980s, in very, very safe and very, very social settings. It was a wonderful experience. I really came into the science of it as a biologist and as a physiologist. I was on a flight from Denver to San Francisco, and I believe it was December of '97. Scientific America posted an article talking about the endocannabinoid system, and the word, I could even say it right away. It's almost like an onomatopoeia, right? Or it's like a nice iambic pentameter, endocannabinoid, and it's just a beautiful word, I think. And so I was so fascinated to learn about the science and the neurons and the CBD1 and the CBD2 receptors all throughout the body. And just if you're first time joining us and you don't know this, one of the huge value of the cannabis receptors is that none of them reside in the brainstem. And so when we're talking about all the other strange drugs that are in our marketplace right now that cause overdoses and things like that, one of the definitive statements about CBD is it can affect cannabis. Anything, any plant you put in your body can affect different organs differently, right? So the liver is one in particular that the cannabis molecules can be processed in, and the kidneys and the stomach and the mind and everything, but it does not reside, no receptors reside in the brainstem. So there's been no documented cases of the use of cannabis that have caused the respiratory arrests that have led to overdoses that are so prevalent with all the opiates. So that's an exciting thing. But the other part of this article for me, which was so fun, and we're about to get into some meaty topics here, so I just want to give you a funny topic, was this image that was in it. It was a lithograph from the 1800s in India, and was up in the mountains, probably where one of the indica strain of cannabis comes from parts of India, along the Ganges River, and it shows these Indian sadhus with these big pipes that they're sitting there, and they're in the cross-legged lotus position, and they're very reverential. And then in the background are all these British soldiers throwing their weapons away and ripping off their red coats and dancing in the fields and smelling flowers and stuff. And I looked at that picture and I just started laughing, thinking, this is a powerful statement about what really the essence of cannabis can be for our society. And now all the science is catching up. But since we're business people here, we need to figure out how this all works into the value chain of the cannabis system. So are you ready? Here we go. Let's take a deep dive. Boom. So this is a quick snapshot of the vertically integrated value chain. And what that basically means is seed to shelf, all the steps along the value chain in the cannabis market. And this is in the current market. There could be way more refinement, way more steps along the way, but these are the genuine ones. Basically, the cultivation starts with the seed and the farm. The harvesting is another step, and there's all kinds of unique skill sets and equipment. Some is man-powered, some is mechanical. Then the extraction process is really the bridge between the production and the distribution and the marketing side. The next step is formulation and development, and that's a super alchemist side. Turnkey solutions, all the different niches and services and products that will emerge within the industry. And then, of course, distribution that winds up with getting the product around, all the legalization around it, e-commerce, retail, person-to-person, whatever step if you're a CBD coach, I see a number of our certified CBD coaches are on the phone, so they fit into the turnkey solution possibly, and even maybe the distribution. And of course, John is a wizard on the extraction, actually a king. You're the king of extraction, not the wizard of extraction. You're probably a little bit of both, right?
I would say that Dr. Jerry King is probably the king of extraction.
Dr. Jerry, well, there you go. Okay. Everybody can make a note, Dr. Jerry King.
I might be a prince, but Dr. King has a lot of the original patents that I read way back in the 60s and 70s. He was very strong into the entire technology. So there's some other people out there too, but Jerry King would have to be the king.
Awesome. Well, good to know. And maybe what we'll do, John, is circle back around and get a list of all these authors and these luminaries that you're referring to, so we can share with our community who attended the webinar. That would be exciting.
That would be great.
One other concept I want to talk about, and this is something stemming from a conversation that I had with John a few days ago about what's really going on in the industry. And a concept I want the business people on the call to think about is what's called the triple bottom line. This is really a key idea for people who are setting up a B Corp, which is different from a C Corp or an S Corp. A B Corp is basically the new emerging paradigm in business for socially conscious businesses. And the three bottom lines are planet, people, and profits. So when we talk about, we're going to dive into some technical stuff now on the next slide. So this is basically 5 main areas of your consideration. And with that sort of overarching idea of planet, people, and profits, I'm just going to let John talk about the production side, the legal side, the business side, the science, and the finance. And we're gonna kind of deconstruct all these topics. We're not going to necessarily go deep into each one of them, but John, I will give you the floor to discuss. Let's start with production. Just a few minutes on these different ideas and how value and testing and integrity really impact the first part of the the value chain.
So my focus on this, and one of my sayings that I like to say a lot, and that is, good is not a number. So no matter where you are in the production side, from cultivation, distribution, label, certainly on processing, is being able to take test points constantly through that process. From the cultivation, making sure that you actually have the plants that you're thinking that you're growing, especially in the hemp side of the business, that the seeds that you have, the seeds that you're propagating, are within the federal standards of less than the 0.3% THC. So when you go back through those, you want to make sure that's comprehensive. The labeling is, of course, critical when you're ever having something that's going onto a shelf. Not only in the labeling of what the potency is, but looking at milligrams per dose. So a lot of times we start to look at percentages, and percentages really don't mean much when you're trying to evaluate between two products, or what your bioavailability and bioactivity of that product is going to be. Processing is certainly every point along that way. I've watched customers after customers, company after company, throwing away product that they assumed had nothing in it. A classic example of this is with carbon black. So carbon black is used to be able to take out the color, take out some of the chlorophyll, take out some of the other components. But what they don't realize is, and I've tested it so many times, is the carbon black is also taking out your acids. So your THCA will go away with the acids. I've seen carbon black that has 9% THCA. You can't get good trim for that. And when I look at the labor and the distribution, those things are also part of the testing, and knowing where they are to train the labor to be able to do the testing, and why it's important, not only for the company, but for themselves. So each one of those comes through on the production side with the analytical testing, in-house or out-house.
We hope you don't do too much testing in your outhouse, everyone. But I think the in-house testing we'll cover in just a moment as well. We'll clarify those terms in just a moment. But one of the things I wanted you to briefly mention was we talked about the byproducts of the different types of testing. So some people on the call might know the terms supercritical, hydrocarbon, CO2 extraction, ethanol extraction, solventless extraction. And we talked the other day about some of the good and some of the unpleasant byproducts that can be converted into, remember the triple bottom line, a more sustainable business model. And one of them involved cat litter. Can you express that, what you told me the other day?
Oh, I have to remember because I'm old, and so I start on medication for more days.
Well, then I'll just step back in and talk some more. What a fascinating
so
webinar. Go ahead.
So when you're going back through and you're looking at each one of these, so on my side, my analogy is not so much the extraction. But to your point, it's formulation centric. What you're trying to make is how you start to backtrack to the way that you're going to extract and the means you're going to extract. So it's not the other way around. If you extract and then just figure out what to do with the product. So my example of that is a thin-lipped frying pan. And with a thin-lipped frying pan, you can fry eggs. If you're careful, you can scramble eggs. If you're really careful, you can make an omelet. But there's no way that you're making a poached egg or a hard-boiled egg in a thin-lipped pan. That's just not going to happen. So when people start to say ethanol is the best way, or butane is the best way, then it really skews the results. The best way is to be able to have something, what I separate into the BEST. So the best way is to keep the botanical integrity of what you're trying to get. Don't ruin the plant. The whole plant is what's providing the entire process. Extraction, but not only just extraction, but efficacy. It's for economy. you can't stay in business and be able to provide a great product unless you're able to have the economics. And S is for safety all the way through the process, from the workers in the field, the gloves, the masks. Dr. Marku would be able to walk through people on different possibilities of things that they might not know the dangers of because they're not wearing gloves or a mask. And T is for testing, and testing with modern equipment. So when you go back through and look at that, I would say that supercritical fluid has its tunability. It allows you to have an orchestra. It allows you to bring off the horn section or the string section as you'd like. You can do ethanol and everyone's heading towards the door, especially room temperature ethanol. It's going to take off everything. And so the difference between those two is the final product that you're trying to make. And so that is the critical part of the thing. The cat litter, I've already forgotten what I did with the cat litter.
Well, we talked about the waste products, and I asked you if there was a toxic waste products. We agreed that none of them were like Chernobyl toxic, but the industry has a lot of shady practices on the cultivation and processing side. So people dump a lot of chemicals out their backyard and there's rivers, the streams. And you had mentioned that some of these inert or organic problematic byproducts could be put into cat litter and reused in a positive way.
Yeah, I think that a lot of times we're throwing everything away. I would say that much in this industry, more than any other thing I've probably seen, and that is because of this fascination with the cannabinoids and the major cannabinoids, is that it's like killing an elephant for just the tusk and throwing the rest of the elephant away. That's one part. But the other part is that with some of the things with the cannabinoids, especially if you're not having a good process, you can take CBDA and very quickly make yourself THC. And some people would say, oh, that sounds dangerous, and maybe we should have CBDA and make THC. And I keep telling people the plant seems to do it really, really well in 13 weeks. I'm guessing they don't need any more help. But to be able to, but to be able to look at all the things. So I would say, I drop his name again. Dr. McKay would be able to look at each one of those, and it's the isomers. There's 8 isomers of CBD. There's 9 isomers of THC. So we remember the flumitamide, terrible, terrible thing with the birth defects in the early 50s. And so what they had to do was look at the isomers. And so looking at the minor ones is critical. And I think that's where the science is really going to explode in the next 3 years.
Yeah, and just so everybody knows, I want to frame the rest of the call. We're about 8:33, and I just want to make sure that everybody knows 2 things. First of all, we're gonna pick and choose on this topics over the next for the next few minutes. But obviously, somebody asked a question about the 5 main areas of consideration, and this is just a framework. Everybody, this is not a perfect structure. Yes, there's fluidity between the topics. This is not meant to say that this is the only list of topics, but these are just ways to view them so you can kind of absorb the information. And it's by no means a definitive list, but this is how we like to teach it in our business builder courses. And I'll get to more questions later. So let's just do this, Dr. John McKay, PhD. Let's just go down legal, business, science, and into finance, and pick one of these and just talk about value in that chain in your experience, where you've seen it good and maybe where it needs help. How about legal?
Legal is an incredibly important part of the business, especially in this beginning phase. And because there's in the United States at this point in time not as much strong guidance from the federal government, then it's important to self-regulate. It's important to have the regulations that you anticipate will be that you would expect through any nutraceutical, and to drive towards that within your own business. And there would be some people that say, well, that costs too much. Well, I would again head towards ASA, or I'd head towards something that allows you to know how important that is. And it's not that hard to set up, and it's not that hard to continue. But the inertia to get there to say, I don't have to do it. Well, you also don't have to clean your closet. There's no law against you not brushing your teeth, but eventually you're going to pay for it. On the business side, I would say, when I'm looking at the business side, I would say the analytics is so critical for the investors that are looking at the businesses and evaluating the staff that they want to have. it's very important to be able to know that what you're looking at is the correct analytics, like you would for any business. Whether you've moved from something where you know very well about it, you know envelopes, or you know cars, or you know concrete, or you know building, all those things are important. But when you did that investment, you knew all the analytics along the side, and there's no reason to not take those same skill sets into this one. Science. So science is the most critical part of this, to be able to guide the industry towards the correct science, to be able to guide the industry towards not the continuum of the fantastic or the infamous versus the realization. So it's an advocacy based on the facts, and the advocacy based on knowing what the boundaries are. It's true that no one has I have not seen any documentation. People tell me they haven't either, as far as respiratory, but people have died within the part of the different phases of the chemistry that they're finding more and more about. It's a side topic.
Just to clarify one thing on that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. I thought you had paused. One thing to clarify, everybody, there's a huge media play happening against the cannabis industry based on synthetic THC, and it's a disgusting drug. It fits in right up there with the crystal meths and all the crazy designer drugs out there. It's mostly rampant in Europe, but it's made it to the United States, and it has nothing to do with the plant. It's sort of like taking the worst chemicals possible from the plant, putting them in concentrations that are not full spectrum, not balanced by other terpenes or other cannabinoids, and basically it's like crack THC. So a lot of the negative reports about overdoses, I have a friend of mine who runs the Denver Medical Center's program for rehabilitation and addiction, and he posts a lot about this, about the issues between cannabis and the synthetics, and also how people are eating it and dosing it. And there's a lot of different ways. So in our trainings, we really like to show people a full gamut of how people can consume cannabis safely. And it's really about every individual experience. I just wanted to kind of throw that out there. And just so we can honor the time here, let's talk about finance one more thing, because that's a big part of what you do, because you work with Newbridge Global Ventures. Why don't you just mention what you do, and maybe that could be the talking point.
Okay. So on that side, when I'm looking at the finance side, it's providing a business that's that's publicly traded, bulletin board, over the counter. But moving forward, it's providing a business that's looking at innovative ways of doing extraction. So it is a vertical. We have the plant tissue, the plant growing. We have distribution. We have commercial. But on the extraction side, developed some multiple centers where I'm doing 5 different types of extraction. So if you go back to my egg, I've got my poached egg, I've got my boiled egg, I've got my fried eggs, I've got my omelet pan. So I have all the different pans, depending on what the customer's wanting, but also depending on what I believe the customers are looking forward to in the future for safety, and having things that don't involve solvents. So I do a lot of solventless extraction, where I'm
exciting, very exciting.
So doing a lot of different processes where I'm trying to remove solvent from as many phases as I can. There's nothing wrong with solvent. You can take it off and strip it from the residual solvent. That's what the testing is for. So on that side, we're making investments based on where the industry's going. So I'm a great fan of Gretzky, and that you go where the puck is going to go, not where the puck is. And so that's where we're driving towards as a company.
We got some fantastic metaphors in tonight's webinar. We got eggs, we got hockey. There's probably a few other we're going to drop before the night is done. However, I do want to mention something. We talked about a topic. I didn't put the slide in, but testing and quality QA, especially at the extraction level. One of the distinctions that my conversations with different people throughout the week have come down to is what testing is most important. And we've broken it down to 4 categories, and these are broad categories. These aren't specifics. The first step is equipment manufacturer QA. The second is in-house testing. The third is reference testing. And then the third is third-party testing. Could you briefly maybe spend a minute on each of those, just to kind of give you what you think is the best practices in those 4 And also the compliance testing is part of third party testing, so that's thrown in there as well. So let's start with equipment manufacturer. What is the best practice for you evaluating the right equipment manufacturer?
The key thing that I've seen for the customers in this industry is that because they haven't classically come from something that's testing, besides, that was really good, or that was really bad, is being able to take the major components that are in the plant that provide safety for the consumer. So potency is critical. Residual solvents is critical. So the other ones, as far as terpenes or as far as some of the other components that might be in there, alkaloids, that's not as critical for the safety, but it's good to know. But pesticides is certainly, so there's simple tests that allow you to quickly know what those components are, as well as where they are in the manufacturing, and what is providing you the best manufacturing and the best yield. I would also say the in-house versus service. Go ahead.
Yeah, you can make that distinction. Go ahead. In-house versus external service, third party.
So you want to use external service instead of outhouse? Who would have thunk it?
Yeah. Well, I think the outhouse metaphor it highlights a segment of this market we'd rather not support and endorse, but I guess it's real, right?
So when I'm looking at the in-house versus outhouses, third-party services, is being able to look at the entire process. What do you want to keep inside, where you're monitoring your own work, but as you're doing R&D, you're not wanting the outside world to know. It's, every corporation does that has their own in-house service. And you can get that really quickly. You can do potency with a very simple test with thin layer chromatography. It costs you less than $600. You can move up towards, work with like Orange Photonics, where they have a small low pressure chromatography that gives you an answer for 7. Those are the sort of things that you can do. You can do it with FTIR. There's a lot of ways of getting a very quick test that when you do the ROI, the ROI is probably days on what would save you versus looking at something and not really knowing the answer. When I have third party, I always encourage my customers to, and the people I talk to, start with the third party that you trust and work with them on your formulations, because you might have coconut oil, or you might have some sort of PEG, polyethylene glycol. You might have something that you've looked at, and then you change vendors on that quantity, and then the third party testing lab now has a contaminant that's interfering with the result, rather than you working with them to make sure that the vendor that you have chosen for your glycol is supported and doesn't interfere with the other parts that you're doing, a formulation or a flavor. And so I'm always encouraging that.
I think we have to pump the brake there, because there's so much depth in what you know about this. And I think what you just did was you gave a great insight into the talk that you're going to be doing, or the series of talks you're going to be doing at the Extraction Conference next week in Pala. I mean, I know the topics we've got you to schedule to talk during the certification course. And third-party testing is a great one. Last week's webinar, everybody, the Success webinar, our friends and sponsors down in Florida, ACS Labs, Roger and Jonathan Brown. We did a great webinar last week with Jonathan, specifically about third-party testing, and I talked a little bit more about the value chain more in depth. So I think that's just awesome. Really quickly, could you just talk about a reference lab, because you mentioned that could be a really nice business niche as well. So what is a reference lab?
So a reference lab, in my nomenclature, is a lab that is not made for a COA or compliance for a testing of for the state. It's one that you go to be able to find out where your processes are. It's one that you have a strong relationship with, and a partner, which is that you don't want to initially have all the cost of bungee cording a PhD to some liquid chromatograph in your complex, or you don't have the glassware, you don't have the reference standards. Reference standards are $2,000 a week. And so to do that, you're partnering. So it's a lab that you can get quick results from, you have a quick relationship with. They're not a COA, they're not trying to be a COA, a state lab. They're just trying to provide great answers for people who don't have equipment already in their facility, but would like to have the results.
Yeah, and this is why we talked about the ecosystem earlier. And really, I love the word ecosystem. John and I have had a couple conversations about it, because the one thing about an ecosystem, this is how I look at it. This is kind of high level, but it's worth for the webinar, I think, to hear this. I think the 20th century was really defined by the atomic and the nuclear approach to things, the deductive process to find the smallest particles in the world and the universe, and everything was broken down into units and systems that fit and really the 21st century, especially with the internet, it really, we're talking about the era of the system. So all the related intercomponents and how they're interrelated, how they rely and interdependent and actually co-evolved with each other. And in this industry, there's so many parts of it that are already in place that the industry has existed underground for decades. The science has been done in people's backyards and people's basements, and certain states have a really strong presence. Other states are just getting into it. So everybody on this call, everybody who's part of the CBD Training Academy, especially those of you who get certified, ding, 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 are really pioneering a whole new approach to how this cannabis product will be integrated into all of the important aspects of our world, and we'll also be able to find the places where it doesn't belong, because there's also restrictions and there's understandings about the power of the medicine, so to speak, that really has to be put into the hands of the consumer, and that's really what we're all about. So it's about 1/4 till. We got a couple more slides just wanted to tell everybody about. So at the top, remember I mentioned what was the key concept that was a takeaway, and the reason I talked about ecosystems and how all of these different layers of the value chain and all these different business considerations that every one of us has every day, it's not about trying to understand each one of them individually, it's about understanding their synergy. And just as a notion, it's one of John's favorite words. John, do you want to talk about synergy in the industry right now?
Sure. So I really believe that synergy is the part that's going to bring this entire industry together. There's experts in every phase, and if you have synergy and cooperation, the pie is growing so quickly. This isn't the time to fight over the slices. This is the time to self-regulate and to help each other. And I think that's going to be the key. It's going to be the key of every part of this industry, all the way from the cultivation, the seeds, the genetics. Everything is open and transparent.
Yeah, and also everybody, the word synergy can sometimes sound kind of soft to business people or to scientists who are into the facts, just give me the facts. Or just let's make the bottom line work, or what have you. But really what synergy is about, there's a great word in science and chemistry called intercalation. And intercalation is basically when one chemical fits into another chemical like a lock and key. A lot of the chemical receptors that activate with the endocannabinoid system, it's the intercalation of the cannabis molecule into different parts of the body, the brainstem, not the brainstem, I'm sorry, the spinal cord, the organs. So synergy is not a soft concept, it's the opposite. It's the essence of refinement. So as you're building your cannabis business or your CBD business, or you're becoming a CBD coach, or soon to be an extraction business certified leader, really refining every element of your business to where it works with every other element, including the network that you build and the resources that you bring onto your team, that is the essence of synergy. So, and the other word key concept, and I'm so glad you brought it up, is Dr. McKay's description of best practices, BEST. Could you just review those really quick, Doctor?
Sure. So as far as the botanical integrity is the key. And E is for extraction, efficacy, efficiency, and economy. S is for safety all the way across the entire product line, from the time you're planting to the time that you're providing a product on a shelf and giving people advice. And then T is for testing with modern technology.
Thank you for that. Now let's go to questions here. And I'm just going to answer a couple of them really quickly. The people you mentioned, Ethan Rutho, Dr. Gupta, and there was a couple other ones you mentioned. Do you want to just briefly mention those as well?
Well, Jehan Marcu, M-A-R-C-U, I believe. John, oh my gosh, I'm going to forget his name. That's terrible. I'll come back to that one. And then
Yeah, no problem.
Alex Macrionis at Northeastern. I would say Eric Kalka is a leading scientist as we're moving forward on the extraction side up in Vermont, as well as Dr. Freeman at the University of Vermont, and his wife Monica, who's a botanist, and he's a MD PhD. So, and there's a lot of them out west, and Jahan's probably a better one who could rattle them off faster than I could.
Yeah, and we're going to have a lot of these people affiliated, both maybe some of the ones that John mentioned, and also other great experts throughout our network, the CBD Training Academy Network. Jorge asked a question about more information about THC versus CBD. Yes, we do have a lot of that information in our training courses. You can do a lot of the research online, but if you want the right context, that's really what we try to deliver, is not just the information, but the context of the difference between CBD and THC. So Jorge, just touch base with us about our trainings as well if you haven't had a chance to. Comments on the 5 areas of consideration and why it is preferred. Oh, that's right. We had talked about that already, how we structured those. They are interconnected. It is synergy for those 5 areas of your business considerations. What is Dr. McKay's definition of full spectrum, and how can this be standardized in the industry? Maybe 30 seconds to a minute on that, please.
So full spectrum in my world, in my understanding too, and that is if you're having full spectrum, then you're actually just taking the plant and putting it into a Cuisinart and then taking it from there, because that's everything in the plant as is natural. I feel more comfortable with a definition of broad spectrum, because when you're doing an extraction, you're taking out hydrophobic and hydrophilic compounds, things that are water loving, things that are water hating, and so those are very different compounds. But the broader the spectrum, in my experience talking with others, gives you a greater therapeutic value, whether it's a potential therapeutic value. So there's some good work out of Spain that showed the difference between the single molecule versus the other molecules that work together. And so I would say that Dr. Mashula is a good place to look at, as well as certainly Dr. Marcoux.
Yeah, in our trainings, we feature a lot of great doctors and naturopaths. Dr. Adam Abadili talks about this extensively on our training. Yeah. Dr. Jake Felice, who's one of our naturopath friends. And we can, the team of the CBD Training Academy can talk about all of these topics. But just to, all of the listeners, there's a couple more questions. One from Gina asking about medical implications and research. If you visit our website, everybody, also there's another question, I think, from Ken, looks like. I'm sorry, I'm having trouble reading these questions about active charcoal. Really what I want to do is 2 things. The first is I'm going to suggest everybody visit our website. We have a lot of materials that you can download for free. We have our courses that we really encourage you to sign up for, and the extraction course is going to be awesome. I'll tell you more about that in just a minute, but most of these questions are really valid questions, and our blog, our newsletters, our online training, this is really where you want to turn your attention for some of the more basic questions, and become part of our network. Get involved, become part of, get certified, so we can continue to grow the database of knowledge and information and standardize it in the industry. Now, as I was mentioned, this is the nation's premier extraction business training next Wednesday in Paula, California. Folks, this is going to be a really cool event. The whole speaker lineup is going to be posted. We'll make sure everybody on the webinar gets the newsletter that has all the lineup with the topics. But it's at an Indian casino and resort in Paula, California. It's about an hour north of San Diego. Beautiful country, and it's in conjunction. It's really the nation's first extraction business training. Other people can get certified as an extractor, but the business side of it is what we're going to dive into. So John framed the training perfectly tonight, because all of his technical questions are going to be supported, or technical topics are going to be supported by how do they make sense in business? How does it apply to purchasing, your budgeting? How do you maintain equipment? How does the extraction product give you new channels into other parts of the vertical value chain? So it's going to be a really exciting training. And John has multiple topics. He is offering the extraction overview in the morning of our business training on Wednesday. He's also going to talk about solventless extraction, which is one of his specialties. There will be a testing discussion that he might be involved in, but he's also the keynote for the Concentration May 31st event, which he's speaking on Saturday at 9:15 a.m. So it's Wednesday is the extraction course that we are producing, and then the expo the Concentration Expo is Friday and Saturday in Paula. So good news too. Ta-da! This is really exciting. We are stepping into the internet era, full steam ahead. Beam me up, Scotty. We are live streaming this entire training. Now, we are working out the technical details, so it's probably going to be a combination of things where in the first part of the training, we might offer just to the general world, say anybody who wants to hear this, come and listen. And then you can also pay the price to get the certification and stay with us all day long. We're gonna be live streaming from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., maybe 6 p.m. now. We've added a speaker. Our friends over at Extraction Consultants, Kurt Metros, is going to join us. And the full speaker lineup, I'll make sure that all webinars attendees get it. It's really exciting. Our friends over at Sierra Gold, Philip Northgood, are going to be there. He's going to be talking about how I built an extraction business. Jason Lapoy, Celeste Miranda from the Mace Media team. Jason is the editor for Testing and Terpings magazine. We have Prescott Technology, Steve Bennett. We have Pat from Big Sky Scientific, Pat Farrell. We have John Van Antwerp from Thar Process. And we have, there's one more that I'll get to right before the end of this. But we're so excited. It's going to be an awesome training. This is the first time we're doing an extraction certification training. So really, it's the first extraction business certification in the country. So this is a great thing. And you can live stream from home now. That's what's a great part. Other training courses, if you're joining us for the first time, we have our professional course, which is sort of what the core curriculum, the core 5 we call them, which is intro, methods of dosing, product quality, and the endocannabinoid system, along with some legal modules. You can sign up for that online. Our coaching certification has specialized modules for people who want to be more involved with guiding someone on their CBD journey. If you're involved in healthcare or medicine, this is definitely the one for you. And our business builder is for, the people who are bringing both head and heart to this game, and they want to really drive the industry. And then you can do it online as well. A big announcement really soon around the corner. We're doing our CBD, our certified skincare live and online. That's going to be produced probably sometime here in Q2. And then, of course, this is big news. This is the announcement. Exciting developments. CBD Week. We've been planning this for almost a year now up in Seattle, June 27th through the 30th. It's an entire week. The deep dive. This is the deep dive for the full comprehensive view of the industry. On Thursday, the professional training, the certification. Also on Thursday is the coach certification. We're doing a meetup group for free Thursday night in Seattle. The CBD Expo is Friday and Saturday, and Sunday is a business builder. And if that were not all, it gets even better. We are announcing right on this webinar for the first time to the public, attention all investors and innovators, save the date, more details to come, Friday, June 29th in Seattle, Washington, the first ever 4C. Cannabis Capital Creation Conference. We are hosting it in conjunction with our friends, Green Seed Cannabis Accelerator. This is going to be one of the most exciting, one of the most effective and inspiring investor events. We're going to have people and innovators can pitch their business plan. Investors will be coming. The Cannabis Capital Creation Conference. Foresee your success in cannabis. And more details to come. We'll get to everybody at the webinar. That's an exciting thing. Just as a bonus for anybody who tuned in tonight, I want to show you this code. It's CBD TA-WOD, which is Webinar on Demand. CBD TA 25. It's basically a 25% offer off all the prices, all the classes that we take, that we offer, including the certification for the extraction course, even the live stream. You can get the 25% off. You have to go up online, register today, and use that code for 25% off all the trainings. And boy, I tell you, we're going to have a good time. John, is there anything you want to tell them about your expectations for extraction, the certification course or concentration, any kind of a high-level view on those moments? On the upcoming
nice part about it, I think the nice part of it is the number of people that are there. So it's not just a single point of view, but a lot of people holding a different part of the elephant, and their experiences are going to be different. But from what I've seen from the list and stuff, their integrity and their science background is what will support other people in the future. It's a worthy thing to go to for sure, especially on the extraction side.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be kind of fun. How many times you get to visit an Indian casino and learn about stuff like this in the context of one of the most exciting opportunities of a lifetime. Just so everybody knows too, the difference between the attending and the live streaming is very simple. And when you attend the event, you'll get the hands-on one-on-one, you get to meet the experts, and we've got some very, very special gifts for people who attend live. We'll give some special gifts for people who live stream the whole day as well. But stay tuned for all the details on that. More is going to come once we get all the technical side wrapped up and presented to everybody. If you have any questions, I know some I didn't get around to answering from a couple different people. I really want to thank everybody who tuned into the webinar. You can send your questions to cbdtrainingacademyinfo@gmail.com. That's the email that I'm using right now. So it's cbdtrainingacademyinfo@gmail.com. And we'll make sure that somehow you get that answer question by one of the experts, ideally by the one, the only, the king of extraction, John McKay. Thank you for joining us, John.
Thank you so much for the time.
It was a delight. Thanks, everybody. We all want to say onwards and upwards. And just remember, it's a big, beautiful world out there, and you are in the right place at the right time. Thanks for being part of the CBD Training Academy community. Good night, everyone.